Welcome, 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 welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Thanks for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us here on this program as we present to you New Paradigms for a New World, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We hope that you will join us for any one of those four broadcasts. We're podcasting too on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and other locations that you folks are reposting to. Thank you so much for doing that. I really do appreciate that. We are on YouTube. I said that right. We're on YouTube. I do the video editing. And I haven't had any critics comment on that yet, but I'm waiting. But it's okay. I have a whole 19 subscribers, and I'm very proud of that fact. Hey, it's a fledgling endeavor on YouTube. Hope that you'll check it out. Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan, either on SoundCloud or the other locations or YouTube. We are also encouraging you, if these programs resonate with you and you'd like to become a part of what we are doing here financially, we would greatly appreciate any support you can give us. That is why I have a PayPal account as well as a Patreon account for your security as well as ours. And then we're asking everybody, I do the best I can to do this myself. Please participate in the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and spend that quality time going within. We hope that you will do just that. Today's program, I think you are going to really enjoy. I know that I am. Already had a great opportunity to converse with our guest who is on the program and on Zoom today, talking about today authenticity Reawakened. My guest is the author of said book about the path to owning your life story and fulfilling your purpose. And I told her, Vicki Znavor, that I sold my story for a nickel and a bag of beans. Vicki, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Richard. It's great to be with you. I love your show.
Well, thank you very much.
If it helps at all, I was just going to say 19 subscribers on YouTube is 19 more than I have. So congratulations.
And if it was 9, I would still feel pretty proud. I really would.
There you go. Yeah.
So for Vicki Znavor and yours truly, please go to our websites, go to our YouTube channels, subscribe, help build those numbers up. I'm going to have to go to your YouTube channel and subscribe. So at least you'll have one.
There you go.
All right. You didn't even put yourself down as a subscriber? Of course, I didn't either. I didn't either. I'm the one that puts the stuff up there. Why do I need to subscribe?
Well, I haven't created the channel yet, but I'm everywhere on social media. I just haven't gone there yet, but okay. I'll follow your lead.
So you're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and I was on Facebook. I do have an Instagram account, but I haven't figured out how to use it yet. I am on Twitter, and I do post on Twitter every time I upload an interview to SoundCloud, and I will do that with your interview and Authenticity Reawakened. It's interesting how when I receive the book in the mail, or PDF, but usually in the mail, they usually throw in from the PR firm a little flyer, and sometimes they'll stick it in the front of the book, and sometimes they'll stick it in somewhere in the pages. There are no accidents. We are looking actually at acting extraordinary. And now I think I've got that wrong. I better use my magnifying glass. Extroverted, yes. Acting extroverted, which for some would be acting extraordinary. And that's in the chapter Authenticity, the Backstory. We'll talk about that, but there are no coincidences. I call them coincidences. And underneath that heading of acting extroverted, to succeed in life, you need 3 things. You need a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. Well, we got the third one knocked down, I believe.
Yeah, no problem.
And a wishbone is part of what this program is about, because we try to give people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. Mm-hmm. It's the backbone, I think, that we have the hardest time with, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because, I think as we as we go through life, we get strengthened by many things. Oftentimes it's the things that knocked us down and we get back up, and that's what strengthens us so much. But you're going to have highs and lows. No human being gets off the planet with lots of pain, and hopefully plenty of joy as well. But it's paying attention to, what was the pain in my life? What are the things that I've endured? One of the things I think it's so important about owning your story is that if you can go back in time, I advise the readers to go back in time and think of your pivotal life moments and think of those moments that have made you who you are. And oftentimes we kind of brush those aside, or we say, gosh, I don't want to go back there because it's too painful. But if you can go back there and see those events as they were and understand how they created the person that you've become, you can actually honor those experiences and see how much they've strengthened you in your lifetime. And then it gives you the resolve to just keep going,
Yeah. You're almost word for word something that I said during one of our programs not long ago, in just that, you do have to own all of your story. You cannot, we can't pull a particular thread out of our tapestry, the tapestry of our story, if you will, without the whole thing coming unraveled, which again, you can't do it. And so you are where you are because of everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly, as the phrase goes.
Yeah.
But as you just said, it can be scary. What are some of the techniques that you have used with people to help them, facilitate them in kind of overcoming, going through that wall, because that's what it becomes. It's a wall of fear.
Yeah. And great that you've used the word fear, because that actually does get in our way more times than not when we're trying to just be ourselves in this world that seems so much bigger and scary than what we would like to think it is sometimes. But so I think what I talk to the reader about is going back and identifying 5 to 7 pivotal life moments. And then there's sort of a walkthrough of how did those moments strengthen you or impact you, or what gifts did they give you, so that you could find some good in something maybe that was really awful. And I'll sort of give you a little bit of a disclaimer in that there are some things that happen to people in their lives that are just so unimaginably horrible that, my recommendation is, of course, get professional help for those things. You still have to kind of go back and find the right place for those recollections in your life as you go forward. So looking back, you don't want to stay stuck in the rearview mirror. My husband always says, if you want to keep looking backwards, that's where you're going to go. If you want to go forward, look ahead. But you do have to sort of say, what place did those certain experiences have in my lifetime? So in fact, I just want to, Oprah just came out with a new book that's called What Happened to Me. And I think it's such a wonderful tool. It's with Dr. Perry that she co-wrote the book, but it's about, I think it does help you sort of even further go into those stories. And certainly Oprah's got many stories that could have knocked her down, kept her stuck for the rest of her life, but it didn't. Those stories actually fueled her to become the person that she became. So, and I would say my own story is something that fueled me as well. I'm the youngest of 12 children, very sort of challenging childhood. My mom was married 3 times before. And so I don't go into a lot of stories about my siblings because I believe that that's their story to tell. But as it relates to me, I saw a lot of chaos in my family. My parents both were alcoholics, and but they were really they were lovely people. They just had challenges with alcohol, and they weren't really well equipped for all the things that came at them in their lifetime or that they created themselves. They weren't well equipped, but I have deep love and respect for them. And if I wouldn't be who I am without them. But that aside, I went back to my stories. My dad was from Mexico, for example, and I lived in a town where he often was ridiculed for he has much darker skin than I have. And he would hear racist remarks on a daily basis. And my dad would have tools, he would just say something nice back to them. He never really engaged in the negative conversations, but it didn't make it less painful for me as a child, as I was holding his hand, to see those comments, or for my dad, who I could see the resolve and the strength in his determination to not let that change his day, so to speak. So that changed me. And I had to learn over my lifetime that, what was acceptable in my company and what was not acceptable in my company. And I know that those comments really changed who I became. I became a head of human resources for a bank, and I was responsible for thousands of people. And those experiences changed the kind of executive that I was. And I wouldn't have been a good executive without being empathetic to challenges that people face, to understanding addiction and the importance of wellness in human resources programs, or human programs, I'll call them. So, I can go back. At the time, those were very painful situations, but they made me who I am. And so that's really what I'm trying to inspire within the reader, is to go back and capture those moments and then say, what did I get out of them? How did it influence who I've become? And then what do I do with that going forward? One last point on this is, I would say some memories, while you can honor them and say, okay, I get it. That's how I became me. But it's sort of like taking a scrapbook with pictures. If you put your pictures of your life story in the scrapbook, that it still holds meaning, but you don't have to take it to work with you every day. You don't have to take it to every single conversation every day. You can put it up on a shelf. And when you want to be nostalgic, or you want to pull it off the shelf, you can take it off the shelf and you can look and revisit it. So that's how I talk about it in the book.
Vicki Znavor is my guest, and we are talking about Authenticity Reawakened. And fascinating, one of the things that came to my mind from my mother's side of the family, when we would have family reunions, or we'd just go down to Florence, Arizona to visit. The majority of my family on my mother's side were Hispanic, of Hispanic heritage. And the one thing that always impressed me when we would go visit, because a lot of the times this is just the way they dressed, obviously, and they're very much ranchers, cowboys, and so forth, was the fact they would wear blue jeans. And most of the time when we were having these reunions, they would dress up a little. And what I mean by that is they would wear white or light blue long sleeve shirts. And I thought, wow, they look great in those shirts, because the dark skin next to the white shirt. I don't know, wow, that just looks really neat. I don't know why that came up, but it did. And it was really interesting. That's another aspect of it too. And it's sort of a sidebar, if you will, in terms of one story. I mean, we've got a lot of issues that we're dealing with as a nation, let alone as a world, when it comes to ethnicity. And of course, I've had, I don't know about you, but I've had my DNA checked, and I am human. I haven't had much therapy, although people have recommended it, but for a whole lot of other reasons. But I used to say as a kid growing up, based upon what I had been told about where family members and relatives came from, I was Heinz 57. And it turns out I was absolutely right. No, not because of the Heinz family, but because according to the initial report from the, AncestryDNA.com or something like that, it said that I was from, and I said Heinz 57, I was from 5 of the 7 continents.
Wow.
The 2 that I'm not from are Australia and Antarctica.
Ah.
I don't know anybody who is actually from Antarctica. Been there probably. I don't know if anybody that's been born there, and I'm not saying there haven't been, but and then of course subsequent fine tuning has said that I am of Native American heritage, and I'm not talking about North America. I'm talking about North, Central, and South. I'm a percent or 2 Eastern European Jew. Irish, thank God. I mean, with the name Dugan, I better be. And we tend to latch on to certain ones. And I did not latch on to my Native American heritage. First of all, because I really didn't know. Although my understanding is Mexico, the Mexicans are made up of Spanish and Indian blood, Native American Indian
Yes.
blood.
Yes.
That was the mixture. And
Yes.
that's where Mexicans came from, so to speak, as far as their heritage. So I have both of those, Spanish and Native American. But I never, even though I was born and raised in Phoenix, and I was surrounded by all these different the reservations and so forth, I always felt it would be an infringement to look into any of that. I thought, no, they're very private in that respect. And you got to show respect. Turns out, oh, I guess I can look into it now.
Yeah.
but there was something about that was rather intriguing. So when we start looking at our story and beginning to own it, I know that a lot of people and some people of German descent, they have a hard time with that because of German history. But they didn't have anything to do with that. They're just an offspring of that particular branch.
Yeah.
So you've got all of these different elements going on. Is that one of the hurdles, another one of those walls that a lot of people have trouble with when they begin the process of owning their story?
I would say that it's probably going, unless you've had some pivotal moments, it's not so much about your ethnicity, unless there were I would say things that happened to you as a result of your ethnicity, specifically, specifically. So if, for example, you came to America and you couldn't speak English and you were in a classroom, no matter what ethnicity you were, that might have been a pivotal moment in your lifetime. So it's really trying to get at the sort of granular to you, those experiences that happened to you. My dad didn't really have me I lived in mostly a white community, Polish American community, and lovely people. But my dad wanted us to just fit in. So, and I hear that from a lot from other people, families of color, et cetera. And so I never really, as a child, didn't identify personally so much with my ethnicity. Because my mom is actually from Kentucky. So my mom was from Kentucky and my dad, they were sort of like Lucy and Desi. And my mom had red hair. My dad, was dark like Desi. But so those things, my dad, just wanted us to fit in and go forward and do your best and all of that. But, as you get older, you just like what you described, Richard, is that then you start becoming really curious. And you talked about this in one of your other podcasts, which I really loved. You said, I looked in the mirror and I said, who is this guy? And so that's, as I think about that question, who am I? That's actually another exercise in my book, is I say, if you want to sort of get in touch, think about your pivotal life moments, those things that made you who you are. But every so often, and this is where the word reawaken comes up in my title, is you've got to stand in front of the mirror and look that person in the eye and say, who am I? Am I showing up in the world the way I want to? And if you're not, whether it's for your family, your friends, yourself, others, community involvement, whatever it might be, whatever's important to you, we'll talk a little bit about values later, is if the answer, you have to stand there and feel the answer. So if you say, who am I? I don't know, when you've done that in the past, if you've had sort of almost an existential experience where you feel back the answer, and it can be really life-changing in some regards. So we do this over and over and over again in our lives, who I was when I was a child. And this is why I talk about this at this point, but who I was as a child when I saw those things with my dad, it evolved and changed. I learned and adapted and then figured out what's really important to me. And then, at 20, I know you're 60. I've heard you talk about that. I'm 60 also. So 60-year-old us is so different than 20-year-old us. So this reawakening happens over and over and over again. And I heard your conversation with Dawn James, which I thought there were so many parallels in what she was sharing and what I'm sharing. But it happens over and over again. So, you kind of learn and grow, and you figure out that answer to who am I changes over time.
Yeah. I have an interview coming up with a gentleman who we're going to talk about this. He's written a book about how his life began through the rape of his mother. Okay. And he's a product of that. And he talks about that. Now, that's part of his story. And one of my first thoughts when I was talking with the PR gal was, why does he put it that way? Does that make it different to other people that he was the product of rape? Well, and then the same thing can be said when we start to mention our differences. I mean, on your webpage, for example, it talks about how you have won a number of awards, and you've been also recognized as one of the leading Latina, most powerful Latinas of 2019. Well, when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, they kept talking about, oh, he's our first black president. And somebody made the fascinating and I think quite accurate comment. We haven't come very far, have we? The day that we can say so-and-so is our president, period, is the day we've made it. But as long as we keep saying Barack Obama is our first black president, if Kamala Harris, let's say she runs in 2024 as president and wins, or God forbid anything happens to Joe, first woman president, when I guess that's going to happen. It has to happen eventually. But it's like, come on, let's move beyond these differences. It's like, and you probably heard this before too. Emotions, we all experience the exact same emotions, but it's our stories that make us unique. Right. And so it's wonderful to tell these stories. I mean, I'm always telling stories about myself, telling on myself as it goes. But at the same time, it's like, okay, and I've been through this emotion and that emotion and the other emotion. But I'm just like you. And when you cut me, do I not bleed red blood? Yeah, I forget where that's from. I think it's from Shakespeare, but but anyway, it seems as though there are times when we will use our stories almost as a weapon.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I'm big on talking about intention. So when I go into, as the head of human resources, sometimes you're going to have really difficult conversations with people. And when I would do that, before I would start a conversation, I would have a little quiet time. I'm not really someone who meditates, although I really want to be. But I would sit and think about, what's my intention with this person? What do I want them walking away, feeling, thinking, knowing, those kinds of things. And that has been a powerful tool in my personal toolkit, is to think about that. And sometimes, certainly in the last year, 2 years or so, we've seen some really dramatic conversations with people that we thought we knew, for example, and saying certain things. And on social media, sometimes we sort of say things that we would never say if somebody was standing in front of us. And I thought about, that in the last few months or so. And I thought, you know what, I used to engage in some of those conversations too, because I told you the story about my dad. And so some things would really fire me up. And then I thought about, when I stood back from that, almost as an observer on the conversation, said, how do I want to show up? What's my intention? Is my intention to change their mind? Well, guess what? That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with certain people, and that's okay. That's their belief. Or is my intention to be the right and make them wrong, or vice versa? Then I decided I don't want to engage in conversations like that. But if we could both say, you know what, Richard, I want to engage in this conversation because I'm a truth seeker. And truth is another word. What is truth, But if I said, let's just sit down and talk about it. You have this perspective, I have this perspective. And most of the time, my heart would say, that's really interesting. Until somebody calls me a name or something like that, then I know, okay, our values are completely different, because I don't think we need to be name calling. But Another book that has just come out by Adam Grant called Think Again is all about how we engage in conversation with people. What is our intention? Are we trying to just win? Do we only see black and white? And I'm not talking about people's skin, although skin color, although that could certainly be part of it. Mm-hmm. But, the world is pretty gray. And the more I've said, oh gosh, most things lie in the middle. Human beings aren't all this or all that. We're a lot of things, a tapestry. So, it's intriguing, but thinking about intention is so important.
Oh, absolutely. Intention, and this program's intention, of course, is to look for new paradigms for a new world, giving people choices and knowledge of those choices. Tell Me Your Story is the program. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We're here with Vicki Znavor, Znavor, Vicki, Vicki, and VickiZnavor.com is the website you want to go to find out more about Authenticity Reawakened. I want to ask you about the title, Authenticity. We can talk about that. What do you mean reawakened? Was it at one time we were already, and this is, I guess, the catchphrase or word, the buzzword today. Were we at one time we were already awakened?
Yes, I would say yes, that is true. And I wasn't really trying to be buzzwordy about it.
Oh, I know.
I'll tell you that. And I know. And I sat on the couch. I will tell you, my husband got tired of listening to me. But when you think about a title for a book, it's a really challenging endeavor. But I would say this is that it really does go back to, who I was when I was, say, 12 years old. And I have vivid memories. In fact, most of my friends I've had since I was 12 years old. I have vivid memories about being 12 and what I thought was important and who I thought that I was and how I wanted to show up in the world in my own 12-year-old way. So, not super sophisticated. But over the years, when you get your first job, for example, it's likely that your manager is going to tell you what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior. If you're lucky to continue to move up in an organization, the organizations I worked at, and I think this is changing and it's a good thing, but you had to dress a certain way, you had to act a certain way, you talked a certain way, and you're rewarded for doing that. So you start sort of molding and conforming. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I worked at a great company for most of my career, my 42-year career, worked at a great company for 26 years of that 42. But there is still this, you kind of lose yourself and you kind of forget who you actually are over time. And if you're not doing that, looking yourself in the mirror, asking, who am I, checking in with your values. I'm a firm believer, and my book walks you through how to identify your values. Firm believer in that values drive our behavior. And so you got to constantly check in, adjust, sort of do that deep dive with yourself and say, oh, okay, you know what? I'm no longer showing up in a way that is me. I mean, how many executives or middle managers even, they go to bed at night and they're thinking about all the stuff that they have to do the next day. And they might really care about people, but those people are on a list of 40 other things to do. And so those things all take precedence. And then before you know it, they've had a crappy conversation with somebody that wasn't their intention. And then you multiply that by many, many conversations. And before you know it, they've sort of just become on autopilot and you lose yourself. So you have to keep reawakening who you are in order so that you get to be 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, 100 if you're blessed, to look back and say, did I live the life that I really wanted to live? Did I show up in the world in a way that really does represent my values and what I truly believe? And did I live my purpose? So I think it's those things. I sort of think sometimes if you have the benefit of looking back on your life before you get to the end of your life and saying, how do I want to show up along the way? This reawakening happens over and over.
Yeah. In terms of identifying one's core values that will then guide us to our future decision-making. One of the things I heard not long ago, and I've been sharing this on a regular basis because it was so intriguing to me the way this guest put it. We were talking about choices and how the saying goes that you are where you are today because of all of the choices you've made in the past.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the saying goes on, or the phrase goes on, and the choices that you make today will determine where you will be tomorrow. But my guest at that time said that the reality is your perception of the future determines the choices that you will make today. And so if you are a pessimist, and I'm going to use this example, no matter, and again, I don't intend to offend people, but our perception of the future as a government is that there are other people and other societies that want to destroy us. And so we're going to build a military that's going to defend us from the chaos. And it's like, and so we spend trillions of dollars on bombs and bullets and tanks and all this stuff. And we'll get into conflicts and we'll lose great potential, i.e., human beings, in this process. However, if we, and this was kind of the way it was put to me shortly before I left the Christian radio station in 1995. Someone said to me, if you are looking for the devil, you will find him. And if you're looking for God or you're looking for beauty, you will find him/it.
Yeah.
And so it is your intention in the moment, but I think too, isn't it, your perception of what you hope the future will be.
Yeah. Yeah. And, hope isn't a strategy. So,
True.
and
It is not.
yeah. And, I think it's if we, I think there's a saying by Roosevelt that says, believe you can and you're halfway there. And I love that quote because, it's just really so true that and it's sort of, if you think about people's experiences, that can become like a lens in a pair of glasses. If you want to see the world, if you want to see terrible things, walk out your front door and they're going to be right there for you. And if you want to see beautiful things, walk out your front door and it's going to be right there for you too. So, and there are a lot of things I just want to say, I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish because there are really tough situations that people face that are totally beyond their control. Yeah. And those aren't the things that we're really talking about. I think what we're talking about here is the things that you can control, like your attitude, how you show up in the world.
Yeah, there you go.
Those are things you can control. Starting every single day, I have, people that I know that start the day like, oh, I've got to go to work today and blah, blah, blah. And I had a friend years ago, her name is Kristen, and she had breast cancer. And she really worked hard to overcome it. And unfortunately, she lost her battle. And I remember encountering her probably about a year before she passed away on the street. By then, I think she had gone on leave or something. And I said, how you doing? And she said, you know what? I'd give anything for another crappy day at work. And I've told that story over and over again, because if you can just change your mindset, wake up and know, gosh, if I've got a roof over my head, I know where the next meal is coming from. And in my childhood, we didn't always know that. We didn't always have a roof over our head either. If I've got those things, I've got some people that I know love me no matter what. Yeah. If you have those things, tell yourself, if you can think of nothing else to be grateful for, I'm one of the luckiest human beings on the planet. And if you can start your day with that, and then the other thing I would say is if you're feeling really down about whatever's going on in your life, ask yourself, what can I do for somebody else that will change their day? And oftentimes it's just saying, hey, Richard, how are you doing today? And then standing there and really listening to the answer. So those are just a few quick tips, but it's really, you have a lot more control than you'd like to think, perhaps.
Yeah. Take that, law of diminishing returns. I had a boss who lived by that philosophy, the law of diminishing returns. Don't put out any more than you expect to get back. And I couldn't, because it interfered with and was contrary to, and this is going to take us into this next step here, the values that I had as a person who was being of service. Now, that phrase was hammered home more so In my present position, going on 15 years here in Santa Barbara, California, where that is our slogan. We are here to be of service to whoever comes through that front door. If they want to do a program, they want to do a commercial, whatever it is. And even if somebody comes in and says, hey, you know, I have this project that I'm working on and I really would like some help on it. Sure. Do I get anything in exchange for it? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. As far as, oh, well, thank you for the cash I can put in my wallet or check or whatever. Maybe I don't. Maybe it's just the experience, the connection with that person. Okay. The just being of service. And so when we start talking about our values, there was something I learned at a personal growth program about, it's kind of that you have this M&M. This was the example that was used. The outside is a hard candy shell. And then you've got the shell itself, the thickness, and we're talking about a peanut M&M. So you have the chocolate underneath that, and then the peanut inside. And each one of those three elements represents your values, your beliefs, your belief. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it's three elements in terms of being in congruity with yourself. Okay, that your beliefs and your values. And I something tells me morals is kind of the same thing as values. It might be a little different. That if those are out of alignment, the candy coated shell melts. Okay, but you get my point. That we have to evolve in a fashion. Because we're still alive, as you just said, we're luckiest people on the planet, and we're still experiencing things. And what we believe changes. That could very well change our values. That could change. Maybe the internal is our truth. I'm going to have to look that up. But talk to us a little bit about the values in the context of authenticity reawakened.
Sure. So I love that whole analogy. That was really good, Richard. And I'll have to check that out online. But so as I walk the reader through the book, the first thing I say is when you know your story, that's great. Then there's an exercise to help you understand how your values sort of derived from your story. So a quick story would be one of my pivotal life moments when I was in first grade. I told you about I had a chaotic family and there's not a whole lot of homework in first grade, but I remember it was 1966-ish or 67. And And I remember I had a teacher, Miss Seda. I really loved her. She changed my life in so many ways, but I never did my homework. So it was sort of, okay, yep, here she is again, not having done her homework. But one day I decided that I would do my homework. Now I was an intelligent kid, but I just never had a reason to think that it was worth doing my homework. But I did my homework, and the entire class, to talk about rewards, the entire class clapped because because it was so unusual. And from that moment, I always did my homework, I'm always prepared, all those things that really changed me. And again, I was influenced by the positive response that I got. And then, you keep doing your homework, you get good grades, you get on the honor roll, you get a National Honor Society, you get all kinds of things at an early age when you're a good student. So if I take that all the way to values, then I would say that my values, when I looked at my own list that came up from the exercises that I walked, and for the readers, I hope I made these as simple as I possibly can, but we're talking about complex life issues here in this book. But my values from just that story would be preparation and learning and honesty. And I'll tell you where honesty comes in from that. But in terms of preparation, I always believe if you're prepared, it's half the battle or more than half the battle. It's most of the battle. Learning. I am a lifelong learner. I know you are too, Richard. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. So, life is always changing. If anybody who says that they're bored, go to the library. It's my favorite place in the world, but there's so many things that we can learn. And then honesty comes in as I've evolved over my lifetime. As an executive, if somebody came into my office without having prepared, I would be visibly irritated. I know that about myself. I'll be irritated if you come in and you're not prepared. I would much rather someone say, you know what, I wasn't able to get my work done, or I'm not prepared for the conversation. Can we reschedule? And I would say, of course, of course. But if you show up and you try to fake your way through that, I'm probably going to show a little bit of irritation. So so preparation, learning, and honesty, those are values that came from just that one story.
Well, you and I, we do part company in terms of doing homework. Uh, I tell you what, it got really bad. Well, it got really bad when I was in high school. I think it was freshman or sophomore year. I was taking an algebra class. My instructor was a Mrs. Summers, very nice woman. And I was working ahead in the book because I loved algebra. It was so much fun working with the variables and also trying to figure out the values and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working ahead in the book. I mean, I was 2 or 3 chapters ahead. That's how much I loved it, right?
Wow.
So she says, you know what? As long as you bring your homework in, you don't have to come to class.
Ah.
Big mistake, Mrs. Summers. Big mistake. Because I stopped doing the homework. But when I was in 8th grade, I wanted to go to Disneyland with the National Honor Society class. So I worked really hard, and I got in the second semester of my 8th grade year. And I don't know, it was as if, oh, we don't want him to go with us, and now we have to let him because he got the grades. Damn it. Which was just so straight. Matter of fact, I will tell you that there were 2 girls, Leslie Williams and Chris Christopherson, not the singer. When we were at Huntington Beach for the first time seeing the ocean myself, and I got a riptide, whipped my feet out from under me, and I was headed out to sea. Guess who pulled me out of the water? Those 2 girls who hated me with a passion. Go figure. Go figure. Oh, we should have let him go. We should have let him go.
Their values, even at that young age, Leslie and Chris, you valued saving another human life. So good for you.
We are talking about Authenticity Reawakened. Vicki Znavor is my guest. It's the path to owning. It's all in caps, by the way, the word owning your life story and fulfilling your purpose. And in chapter 10, she has 100 ways to authenticity. I'm not going to go through all of them. Here's one I think is absolutely critical. Okay. I think that it ought to be number 1, but it isn't. It's number 20. That so many people have so much trouble with asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
What is their problem?
Well, we don't like to appear vulnerable. And sometimes when you're going to ask somebody for help, the first thought that you have is, if I ask Richard for help, what's he going to want from me? And and so I think that it's just important to allow yourself
a check
to write a check. So it's also really important to laugh every day, also, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, so that's the reason why, I, as a young mother, for example, I was going to school at night. So my story, I also went to school for 15 years while I was raising my kids and working full time. I have 3 children, and I was determined not to ever let anybody say that my kids weren't perfect. And we all know, as we've gotten older, how ridiculous that is. But I used to iron my our baby's clothes, because I wanted them to be pristine and perfect. And, this is where you learn, like, no, but none of the adults in my life ever said to me, and I had lots of support from my mother, my husband's mother, my husband for sure, but no one ever said, hey, how you doing? You look really tired, or are you okay? And I certainly do that now with young moms. Again, this kind of goes back to, once you go through a certain experience, you're more sensitive to other people who you see are going through the same thing. Are you okay? How can I help you? I think, and then also as just ourselves, as we're going through whatever it is we're going through, and we all go through tough times, know that people are honored that you would ask them for help. And
Yeah.
human beings, there's beautiful stories in all of us. We want to help. So let somebody else help you.
Yeah. Vicki Znavor is my guest. We're talking about authenticity rewarded. Another one we'll talk about here in just a moment. I'll bring it up in just a second, but you made me think of something with my parents. Now, you had three. My mother had double that. My mother and father doubled that with six. And I'm sure that, and they did. I still remember one of our regular babysitters. Her name was Lulu. I don't remember her last name. She's the nicest woman I can recall. I don't even know if she lived in the neighborhood, but I do know that she was someone that my parents called pretty regularly as we were growing up, when I was still third, maybe fourth in line before my two younger sisters came along, 5 and 6.
Sure.
But it's really interesting to look back and see what my parents went through. And it's really interesting. My parents, when I had them on this program, which has not been released yet, there's an embargo placed on it by my mother, but that's okay. Relatives have heard it, and that's been okay. But the question has often been asked, oh, Richard, wow, boy, they must have really sacrificed. Well, I asked that very question, Mom, Dad, did you guys sacrifice? They said, no, because we wanted a big family. Did you, Vicki, have you in your parenting, in your family, have you sacrificed in that context?
No, I mean, I would say I worked my butt off, but it was worth it. And I did it with great love. So it didn't feel like a sacrifice. And I suspect your parents felt the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to one of the others that I think this to me is another one of those criticals, could be number 2, but in reality, it's number 48. Don't gossip. And I have to tell you, some people might say, well, yeah, okay, we don't want to gossip about the people in the workplace or family members. No. We're talking, I would think you're talking literally no gossiping. I don't care if it's about the man in the White House, the man in the Vatican, or even the man in the mirror. Self-deprecation is probably bigger than I don't know if the phrase is other deprecation, but we tend to just and I know this is sort of a side thing of gossiping, and we just constantly, some of us, I had one guy that I used to work with who would go in and record his news. And I was in the control room and he was in the production room 2 doors down. And when he would make a mistake, the screaming and the yelling at the equipment or at himself and the profanity and then even on the air, when he was producing shows, when he was on the air, he would put himself down. And I thought, come on, guy, you're better than that. You got your unbelievable voice and you're talented behind the console and so on and so on and so on. And I have to watch myself too. I mean, I have never been at that level, but we get into that habit, don't we?
Sure. So I'm going to address it in two different aspects. The first, in terms of gossiping. So I don't do it. And I think a lot about being authentic in this life involves, if you've got an issue with someone, say it to their face. Don't talk about them behind their backs. I think it's a cowardly act. And I've never really enjoyed being around people that do that. And when someone gossips to me about someone else, red flags go up and I automatically in my head decide, you know what, this isn't a person that I think is going to be somebody that I want to continue a relationship with, unless I have to, if it's my boss or something like that. And I have had a situation like that where an HR person gossiped about colleagues, and that is a huge, big red flag for an HR person. And also just for anybody in my own life. So I don't enjoy that. And I don't do it myself. And then as it relates to putting yourself down. So putting yourself down, and for that gentleman that worked by you, I would say is sort of it's an interesting way to hear your messages to yourself. So when you're feeling that way, I know sometimes when I've been depleted, and I've had that in my lifetime and in my career where I felt just drained, I would say things to myself like, get it together, or, you know what, you are just, a disaster right now, or whatever those things that we say to ourselves. I'm always on a diet, so there's lots of things some things that come into my head about that too. But when when you hear that, sort of step outside of yourself and say, okay, I am off balance. If you don't love yourself and you're not loving of yourself in, a certain part of your day, and we all have crappy days sometimes. So that's not what we're talking about here.
No.
It's sort of when it's an ongoing dialogue with yourself, that's really putting yourself down. Say to yourself, okay, what do I need to get back on track? If there's one thing that I can do to change how I'm feeling about myself, what is that one thing I can do? And then just start doing whatever it is. And if it's just start your day when you're thinking about that gratitude that I talked about before, think about, so with my weight, for example, I will say to myself, my body has served me so well. I have given birth to three children without anesthesia, by the way. And I am a healthy 60-year-old. I may not look like Cindy Crawford, but I feel great. And it served me well. And it sort of changes how I feel. And my health is a blessing. So you have to sort of think about, how can I reframe this? And that gentleman probably was feeling like he was trying to live up to an impossible standard of, quote, perfection. And I know you've talked about that before too, Richard, in your podcast. Perfection doesn't exist. So ease up on yourself and find some love and kindness for yourself. It starts with you.
Yeah. Now, there are two things. I want to dovetail off of the perfection aspect, but first, I want to talk about going the opposite direction when it comes to this gossip and or self-deprecating. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but maybe even fortunately, we have a prime example from the last 4 years of someone who cut people down to their face and in public to everybody else in the world. And I have asked over and over again, business people in particular, if you had an employee who behaved like that, how long would they be employed? They say, oh, I'd fire him right away. We wouldn't tolerate it. I says, why is he over there? Why is he in that house? I don't understand. You wouldn't hire them and keep them employed, and yet you chose, because I didn't, you chose to have him there. I'm baffled at the I want to say at the contradiction. But we also have that other aspect of it where it's in terms of self-deprecation, there's self-adulation. We can call it narcissism, where we have a grandiose. Now, first of all, I love doing these programs. I love doing the podcasts and the video casts. I have a lot of fun doing it, and so far I haven't run out of questions. I'm good at what I do. Okay. That's as far as I'm going to take it at this moment. I'm good at what I do, whether it's production, whether it's doing the interviews, whether it's video editing, which I'm still less than a year into, and so forth. But there's always going to be someone out there who's better at whatever it is that I'm talking about that I do than I do. And that's okay, because there's always going to be somebody who's not as good, who needs my help, and I hope they will ask for help. But that's the other side of those two aspects of the conversation we're having about gossiping and self-deprecation, is then going way over to the other side of that line.
Yeah. And, in my book, I believe, if I recall correctly, I finished writing the book in November of 2020. But, if you're sitting in a room, and I'll put this in a work context, but I think it applies in any context, and somebody walks in and they behave in some of the ways that we've seen, former President Trump behave. My first thought when I see someone like that is to say, oh my gosh, they really lack confidence. because they have to put on an entirely different mask so that you don't weed through that. And the more dramatic that mask is and that behavior is, the more, the more they lack true confidence, which is something that nobody can really give you. You have to have it yourself. And so, that's one thing I would say is just sort of say to yourself, oh, okay, this person doesn't have confidence. And for me, when I was just coming up in the workplace, I knew that instinctively. And so I just kind of, in my own way, I like to laugh a lot. I would giggle in my head, like, oh, okay, go ahead, you be you, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I guess for me, as it relates to sort of just thinking things through, the one thing I would hope that all of us would do is it goes back to what do we really stand for?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can look at somebody who can degrade people and say some horrible, horrible things and consistently not speak up,
Yeah.
you are actually supporting that behavior, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah. And again, I'm not attacking anybody here. I'm just trying to, this person put them out in the public eye, so I'm able to use them as an example.
Right.
And by the way, I went through 4 phases where I got drawn in September 2016, and it took me 6 months, as I say, to get unsucked. I got sucked in and I got unsucked.
Mm-hmm.
And the first phase was, thank you, teacher, for teaching me how not to behave. Second phase was, I forgive you, but more importantly, I forgive myself for allowing myself to be drawn into the quagmire. Third phase was, and this goes to your point, what is it that you are so afraid of that makes you behave and speak this way? I'm not asking you to change. I need to understand so that I can then let this go and move on with my life. And then one of my guests shared with me the ultimate, the 4th phase. 3 simple words. You got to mean them. And it's tough sometimes, because I had bullies in school. And of late, I have found out that some of the bullies have passed away. We were all the same age. Some of them passed away at 55, 56. I don't know of what. And yet I was still saddened by that. Not so much because I didn't get my revenge. Never wanted it. And that is these 3 simple words. I love you.
Yeah.
You're a human being. You have every right to be here, just like everybody else, whether it's the bullies or the harassers or whatever, the narcissist, doesn't matter. I may not like the behavior, but you still have a right to be here. You have a role to play just like the rest of us. And you're playing your role really well, because you're really teaching me, and I hope a lot of other people, this is not the way I want to be. And it makes me think of how unhappy people are.
Yes.
Talk to me about this aspect, especially of finding one's fulfillment in our purpose and happiness.
I think happiness it's so personal. And, I think a lot of times people seek happiness, and it's such a shallow endeavor, frankly, that, I almost tend to say, I wonder if it's not better to feel fulfilled or satisfied, that you have given life your best shot. So, when I think about purpose, I think about it in terms of answering 3 questions. The first is, what do I want in this life? And being really clear about it. So I say that my want statement is, I want to be healthy and happy and able to work with people that I love and respect, and to be present for those that I love. So that's what I want. It guides my actions as I go forward in this lifetime. So, the next statement is, when am I at my best? So when you think about, you talked about bragging before, that you really don't do that, and that's good. But when I'm at my best, what do I know about myself at the core is I can love, inspire, help, and enable other people to do their best work and to bring their purpose to life. In some degree, for me personally, that has always been a part of any job that I've ever taken, even though at a young age, I had no idea that was my thing. But I always thought, I love it when I can look at somebody's face and they're doing what they love doing. And it may not be something that gives them financial reward, and they may have to do 3 other things in order to do the one thing that they love. But when they're doing the thing that they love, their face shows it. And there's nothing that can buy that luck. You have to earn your way through it. And then finally, like, what do you believe? What do I believe? I believe that when people live their purpose authentically, they're able to pay it forward to others, and the world will be a better place. If all of us did that, you're doing it with the work that you're doing. A lot of people are doing it with the work that they're doing. And there's millions and millions of us on this planet. If we each do a little bit of that, I do believe the world will be a better place.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go into my podcasts and video casts, and I'm going to flip a switch, and they're all going to play in reverse, and then try to figure it out. Just having a little fun.
Awesome.
I'm not serious.
Have fun.
We are talking with Vicki Znavor, and we're talking about authenticity reawakened. That is right. It has been sleeping in some aspects. I think we kind of had it when we were kids. And then it gets, I guess the word that people have used is it's been programmed out.
Yeah.
By all of the other messages that are coming in. And what I find fascinating is that we start to remember this stuff as we get older. But it's already too late for the kids that we had, because we've already programmed them with the garbage that we're now figuring out. Oh, I shouldn't have told them that. What the heck was I thinking? But hey, that's really the first step, is becoming aware of the issues that we have to deal with, and then dealing with them, and take them one at a time. And I guess, I don't know about you, I've been through a number of personal growth and development programs. I went through a program called Life Spring, which was an outgrowth of EST in the 70s and early 80s. And then I went through a couple of others in the 90s with my first wife, called Delta Vector and Omega Vector, out of Phoenix, Arizona. A gentleman by the name of George Adair founded those, based upon Teilhard's work and the 0 point, among other things. And one of the things that we can chat about here real quickly before we wrap things up is there's a poem that I like to quote, and it basically has to do with the gods, and and finding about and the truth about man. And the gods are really concerned that man is going to find out about the truth about himself. So they've got to figure out where to hide it. And so they're starting to throw up ideas. Let's hide it at the top of a mountain. Now he'll figure out how to climb it. Okay, let's see what will be called the Mariana Trench. We'll drop it in the depths of the sea. Nah, he'll figure out how to get down there. How about we put it on the moon? Nah, he'll find a way to get there. We'll put it here, we'll put it there, we'll put it wherever, and again, no, he'll figure out a way. And finally one comes up and says, I know where we'll put it. We'll hide it in his heart. He'll never look there.
Yes.
What about the aspect of knowing thyself, and again, this ties in with our decade of perfect vision, the 2020s. And going within and listening to that still small voice, and getting in touch with all of those aspects, the good and the not so good, in order to be, I guess, wouldn't you say then, a more well-rounded individual, at the very least for self?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's your path to being whole. And, to go into your heart, to really think about who you are, to own your story, to work on the things that really aren't congruent with who you want to be. It doesn't mean that things are going to, again, I'll use that perfect word again. Things may not be perfect for you, but, and they're not perfect for anyone, because we're not the only people in our lives. But when you have that story, when you're able to really dive into it, takes a lot of guts, first of all, to do that. It's an act of courage. But when you do that, and you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and on a regular basis and say, you know what, I showed up in this life as myself. I did my very best. I lived my priorities, those kinds of things. I think it just gives you peace, and peace is highly underrated. And I think that but yet it's the most important part of living as a human being. And you're able then also to help other people. And really that word help comes up again and again, in that, we are here to serve others, all of us in some regard. And so when you're a whole person, you're able to do that work in your life much more effectively.
Yeah. Well, there is no question that we do face all kinds of challenges in our
Yes.
lives.
Yes.
That's actually a given that we
Yes.
do. I mean, it's just the nature of this world. It is how we respond or act
Mhm.
and learn how not to react, because that's based upon old beliefs and old programming, isn't it?
Yeah. And old habits.
And old habits. Yeah. Well, Vicki Znavor, I want to thank you so much for joining
Thank
us on the
you.
program, sharing with us about Authenticity Reawakened. I'm curious about one other thing, though. Why do you care?
Yeah.
I say that flippantly because I don't want it to come across too serious,
Mhm.
because it's like, okay, you found, quote unquote, the secret. Go and live your life. Leave the rest of us alone. We'll figure it out eventually. I mean, won't we? I mean, really?
Yeah.
But why is this important for you?
Well, because having been the head of human resources for so many years and seeing so many people struggle unnecessarily with some of these issues, made me really want to care. And also, I'll go back to that statement that I talked about in terms of what I believe. So I believe that when we're able to do this, that the world can be a better place. And I want to do my small, tiny part to make the world a better place if I can do so. So I put the book out there. I wrote it with all my heart. And I hope that if it can reach a few people even and change how they're showing up in the world, then my work is done.
Well, I personally believe that after every raindrop falls, a rainbow will come, but that's another story and another song for another time.
Yep.
Was there a catalytic moment? I mean, a defining point when you said, even though you may not have had a title, I've got to put this down for others.
Yes. So I left my job and my career essentially in March of 2020. COVID was just hitting. And I said to myself, I want to write a book. Books have always saved me. I've always been a great lover of books. I want to be part of the legacy of authors. But I had no idea what to write about. My publisher suggested that I talk to people and ask them what they thought the hallmark of my leadership was, so that I could pass on something to other people. Time and time again, I got authentic. You show up as a real person, and as an executive, that really helped us because we felt like we could be more ourselves when you were at work, that type of thing. And then I not only just counted on my own stories, I did tons of research for the book, and actually read hundreds of articles and books and things, and share a lot of the research with the readers in the book as well. But yeah, I mean, it was, again, wanting to put something out there that I could speak from my heart about.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's another book in my soul. I have no idea what it's going to be, but sometimes you put things out to the universe, and God, you talk to God. And I have said in my prayers, more times than not, use me how you deem appropriate. And I believe that he deemed this appropriate for me at this stage in my life.
Yeah. I don't know where this is coming from, but I think the book is going to be about the mythical jackalope.
Oh, well, you know what? I'll have to do a lot of research because I know nothing about any of that.
He's a cross. He's a cross between a jackrabbit and an antelope, but that's another story for another program. Let me thank you again for joining us on the program. Having so much fun here, talking about Authenticity Reawakened, the path to owning your life story and fulfilling your purpose. And your life story does not have to become a full-length feature film or a miniseries for that matter. I've even jokingly said that, if my life were a what do they call it? oh my gosh, like Survivor, but there's a name for these programs.
A docu-series.
No, it's actually not
No?
even that. But if people were watching my life unfold,
Oh,
like they do
really?
the Kardashians and so forth.
Reality show.
Thank you, reality show. Why couldn't I think? I wouldn't watch it. Okay. I mean, my life is pretty darn exciting to me, but I got more important things to do than sit and watch somebody living their life
Right.
and going through their drama. So, folks, get into your life, get into your own movie, if you will.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about with another one of my guests about music is maybe even come up with your own theme song.
Mhm.
Have you follow you around the rest of your life and have it on your phone, playing it as you're going through. I always thought when I was a kid growing up, watching the musicals that my folks would watch on TV on Sunday afternoons, that ought to be the way the world would be, where you'd go through life with every so often we'd break into song, and dance in the streets, I just thought that would be so cool. And of course, it doesn't happen, but rarely, very rarely. But we thank you for being with us and sharing this unique perspective on being authentic. Authenticity Reawakened is the book. The guest, my guest, and the website as well is Vicki Znavor. VickiZnavor.com. Vicki Znavor, VickiZnavor.com.
Yes.
VickiZnavor.com. And we thank you again for joining us on the program. I do have 3 final questions for you. Obviously, if you've listened to my podcast, you know what's coming. So you can sit there and stew while I let our listeners know that we're here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We're also on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. now, 9 a.m. with a very special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We are also on podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and others that you are reposting us to. The YouTube channel, Richard Dugan, Tell Me Your Story, where you can watch these interviews and you can see us chatting away and having a good time. And we hope that you will do that, as well as participate in supporting the work that we are doing by sending a contribution through PayPal. We really would appreciate that if you can do that. We'll take energetic support too. We're not picky in that respect, but certainly it doesn't pay for the services that we utilize. But you know what? We're going to keep doing this just as long as we can. And we thank those of you who have helped and who will help. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so grateful for those who have, over the last 3 or 4 years, supported the work that we're doing. It's so appreciated. But even more importantly, I want you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. Go within. And again, we both Vicki and I've said it on many other programs. She said it. It isn't always going to be easy. Sometimes it can be a little scary. There's a little fear that because you're going to have to face the dark side. But believe it or not, that is part of who we all are. You're not alone in that, okay? It's nothing unique to you. And if you need help, call Vicki, call me. I don't ask for help, okay? Go ahead and ask for help. It's okay. Don't be so proud. This is not charity work. We're here to help each other. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If the good Lord had intended for all of us to live solitary lives, I know that there are 7.8 billion M-class planets in the universe, that each one of us would be occupying one on our own. But guess what the reality is? All 7.8 billion of us are right here. Let's work together. Go ahead and ask for help. And if you can help, be there to help.
Yes.
So the first of my 3 questions: who is Vicki Znavor?
A woman determined to live her best life.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
The ability to help others.
And to your book's subtitle, what is your life's purpose?
To help other people make the best lives for themselves as well.
Vicki Znavor, thank you again for joining us here on the
Thank you.
program. I really do appreciate it. We look forward to
Thank
having you
you.
back when book 2 comes out.
Great.
Whether it's about jackalopes or the unicorns or old Nessie, or something a little bit more profound than that.
Yeah.
We look forward to having you back on to talk more about that, because to reiterate these things, repeating these kinds of things is so important. Sometimes I think, oh gosh, we just talked about that 2 weeks ago. So what? Sometimes it bears repeating, and we thank you for helping us to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And I thank you for listening and watching. Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to love.